to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, then my name is Katie. I'm a full-time sketchbook artist, and today I'm going to be talking all about the Derwent XL graphite sticks. So I received this set for my birthday. You might have seen it in my art haul from July, but I'm really excited to try this out. Completely different to what I usually use. I don't use graphite at all, but they did remind me of the XL Inktense blocks that Derwent do, so I'm going to be testing them out like that, seeing how they work with water, seeing how they layer and also mix. So I think this will be a really fun experiment. So I'm aiming for a lot of texture and a lot of play. Generally that's how I work, especially when I get new materials, I just start using it. So I haven't looked up anything about these, I'm not really sure how to start, so I'm just going to start by swatching and then I'll create something in my sketchbook. I think creating art is all about play and experimenting and just having fun. So that's my aim today. It might not turn out how I expect, but I think that's the joy of creating, so hopefully you'll enjoy watching too. But either way, we're going to have some fun and I'll let you know my thoughts along the way. So I'm just going to start by showing you the XL graphite blocks. This is a set of 6, so we've got 4 colours and then 2 that are just plain graphite. You can see they're really chunky and a really good size to hold in your hand. You've got olive green, dark Prussian, raw umber, burnt umber, soft, and then very soft at the bottom. So I'm going to swatch them here and I'm also going to smudge them out with my finger. I want to show the strokes that you can get by just applying the block to the page and also using the corner to get those scratchy marks and then softening them with my finger. You can get other colours of these. You can get a set that's just the plain graphite and you can also get a set with more colours. So I know there's also an aubergine and a couple of other ones. But this one is a mix of both. And like I said in the beginning, I got them for my birthday. So it's a new medium for me that I haven't used before. So here I'm just using them dry, but I will come in with a wet brush in a moment to see how it activates because they are water soluble. And then you'll see on this bottom one, which is the burnt umber, where it's kind of cracked off. So when I first swatched these, which you can see here from the July haul video, it really cracked off a part of the block. I haven't had this happen on any of the others, but it did feel like the outer layer was easy to break. And so when I was swatching it again for this video, a few more pieces did break off because obviously the structural integrity of this block was compromised. So you can see little shards of it coming off. And so that was a shame, but it did only happen on that one block, but something to think about. And I'm not really sure why that happened. I guess that maybe that one just had a little crack in it and it made the outer layer of this graphite block come off. But I did want to mention that here. And then I'm swatching the bottom ones, which are the soft and very soft. So I did find that the soft was more of a grey tone and then the very soft was much darker. And that to me feels a bit more like charcoal. But again, Derwent do have a set of just charcoal. These are the graphite blocks. So here I am just applying some water. So I'm just using a brush, dipped it in my water pot, and I'm just doing that straight onto the page. You'll see with the piece I create in my sketchbook that I do use it differently with the water. But for this one, I wanted to see how it would activate. And I was pleasantly surprised. It was really easy to come up with the water. One of the other things I want to talk about is fixing. So I haven't fixed any of my work yet after this point, and I do think you need to. So they are very soft and smudgy. It's kind of like using soft pastels where you'll put your finger on the page and some pigment will come up. So I think if you are going to keep this in a sketchbook, at the moment I'm just putting paper in between my pages, but if you wanted it to be fixed and so it won't come back up, then I do think you need to use spray fixative. So I'm just going to use my pastel fixative to make sure nothing moves. But I really liked how soft and textured you can still get when applying with the brush. And here I am applying my brush straight to the pigment block and then swatching them again over here. So you can apply them dry and add some water, or you can apply them wet. Basically, I was using this as a watercolour palette at this point, and I really like the versatility of that. I enjoy making a range of textures, so I like that you can pick up the block and apply them. It's kind of similar to the Derwent Inktense blocks, which I mentioned at the beginning. Again, I really enjoy the versatility of a lot of the Derwent block products. So I do think that the colours are pretty accurate to what you can see on the block, but where I've been applying the paintbrush, and you'll see in the final result as well, that I've used them quite a lot. So as you are softening the block itself, you are chipping away some of that writing. So I can no longer see the colours on my block. So if that's a sticking point for you, you may want to write that in the lid or stick a sticker on or something. But otherwise you can just look it up online. But it's something to think about because I find that with the Derwent Inktense blocks, I have no idea what colour I'm using. And it didn't take very much water for that to sort of like dissolve away. Then I wanted to try mixing them together, so I put down the different colours. I put down one block colour first, and then I went to another block and mixed that straight on top. So there was no mixing on a palette, it was done straight on the page. Because they are quite wet and malleable, it meant that it mixed really, really nicely, and I really enjoyed doing this little test at the bottom. I think it makes them very versatile, as I've mentioned already, but I really enjoyed how these looked, really full of pigment, really settled on the page really nicely and mixed in really well, so I will definitely be using them in this way, and I really like the richness that these colours have. Here's a little look just at the swatch page. So again, this is the Royal Talens sketchbook that I'm swatching in, so it is ivory toned paper, but I really like the range of colour here. I like having the option of the graphite at the bottom, though I'll probably be using the colours a bit more, and I definitely enjoyed using them as like watercolour paint. I really like the way that these look and the texture that it gives on the page. So now I've moved into a Strathmore mixed media sketchbook. This is the 500 series. I use this a lot for my wet mediums. I knew I wanted to really play around with water, and the Royal Talens does buckle, so I wouldn't recommend the Royal Talens if you did want to use a huge amount of water, and especially with a mop brush, which is also what I'm using here. This is from Artway, so I'll leave a link to all my materials down below, but I knew that I wanted something with a bit more tooth and something that would really hold up to the amount of play I really wanted to do in this session. So you can see I've started by using lots of different marks. I've dipped my paintbrush onto the block and applied the colour there, and I'm also using my paintbrush to apply water to the page and then coming in with my block on top. So it does pick up a lot of the water and it creates some really lovely rough marks. What I wanted for this one was a really stormy sort of sea and skyscape. So we are doing water on Patreon, and that's a theme we're continuing in September, so I knew I wanted to play around with the texture of the water and also have a moody sky. So I used a few different references for this and also made it up. So that was fun to do, and also used a bit more of my imagination. I very rarely do like moody skies. I mostly do clean skies and lots of blue skies. I'm very much an optimist when it comes to the weather in my paintings. So this was really fun, and I did enjoy putting it down, applying it with my fingers as well. So that's something that I'm trying to embrace a bit more, which is the messiness of art. And this medium really did encourage me to play with that. So you'll see at the end I do show my hands, which do become very, very messy. But it was nice to embrace that childlike play of getting in there with my fingers and smudging things about and just creating a lot of texture. So I mostly did use it wet, but obviously you can use them dry and really build it up slowly. It's similar, as I said, to soft pastels, so I think you can apply it with like a blender. You can use the little sponges on the stick, but I don't think it comes up quite as much as if it was a soft pastel. So when you are laying these down, it just comes with like one line rather than a softer line. So you can be quite precise with these, but I do like that you can use them with water, and it kind of feels like wet gouache / watercolour. It doesn't feel like ink, it's not quite that opaque, but it definitely feels more like watercolour, and I was really pleased with how the pigment turned out. So like I said, they are really, really rich, and I do like being able to apply them in different ways. So you can see here I'm applying it straight to the page. Because of the tooth of the paper, you can see it created that texture. So I do come in with my paintbrush, but you can kind of see the original marks. If you really didn't want that to show, then you can apply more pigment, but it does create that scratchiness first. If you didn't want that, again, you can also apply it straight with your paintbrush by using them as like paint pans. So loads of different options, and I was really just playing with the textures. As I said at the beginning of the video, that was my main aim. So I've been using quite a lot of big marks, so I really wanted to test out something a little bit more detailed, so I do paint in this boat. This is probably the part of the picture that doesn't quite match the wildness of the rest of it, so it looks a little bit too calm maybe on the waves, but I enjoyed painting this in, and I think as a boat it's quite sweet, and I think it needed that sort of focal point and that interest for the rest of the picture to work. So again, I'm just playing around on the sea. Now I'm not using a reference here, I am just playing with my marks, applying it on wet, applying in different colours, and I did try to use all of the colours in this reference, which I did manage to do, and kind of just mixed in the browns. I kept the background, the water and the sky with the dark Prussian and the graphite, and then used more of the greens and the browns in the foreground. It felt like it was missing some contrast, so that's why I come in with the darker colours here at the foreground as well. I really love some of this texture. So for this, I applied it on top of a wet page and it activated the graphite like that. And then at the top, I also dipped the whole block into my water and applied it on there. And I love that thickness. I did soften it out with my brush, but I think that was really fun. So just like I do with my ink tents, I do have a video all about ink tents on my channel, so I'll leave that in the cards. But you can also dip these blocks in and apply that to your page. So that's why I think it's important to have quite a thick stock to work on. And then I do come in again with my paintbrush just to try and add a bit more delicacy to the page. So I wanted it to feel a bit more purposeful. So that's what I did with these lines, and I think that really helps. I think it just helped it feel a little bit more considered. So here's how it's looking with just the graphite applied before I then come in with some mixed media on top. And you can see all of the textures, all of the mark making. That's definitely something I'm always trying to get in my work. So these definitely worked, and I do like how it looks. And here's my messy hand, so I definitely needed to wash that off before then coming in with my mixed media. So in terms of mixed media, I did actually only use my pencils, so I suppose not much mixed media in this piece, but it is important to note that if you are working on top of it with like gouache or watercolour, it will pick up the pigment underneath unless you fix it first. So I can still run my finger over the page and pick up pigment. So whatever you apply on top will pick that up, and you'll see that even with the pencils, when I'm applying it over some of the darker tones, it picks up some of that dust. So here is an example. You can see it's kind of scratching away some of that pigment, and I can just blow that off. So it does create the pigment on top because I'm kind of scratching it off of the surface. So when it's applied really thickly, that is something to think about. It doesn't do that when it is wet. So if you've applied the water over the graphite, then it's not as likely to come up. So I'm just applying some more marks and some more colours, mostly using greys and blues. So I'm just kind of building up some of the textures in the sky. I'm mostly using Derwent drawing pencils and also luminance, and just building up some of the tones in the water. I do think this is a really good base, but as I said, you do have to be careful what you use on top. I definitely think it's great for playing with texture and mark making. I think a really good test that I could do is do a base layer and then apply a fixative and then work on top of that and see how that works. I think it will depend on the fixative I use, but that could be fun to do lots of really layered work. And as I said, I do really like this as a base. I really love the textures, and I think the overall feel of this piece and the atmosphere of it does match the graphite. So it feels quite chunky and rough and textured, and I really enjoyed working in this way. It is very different to my usual work, but I feel like there are elements of me in there. Obviously my style and the way I work is the same as I approach this, but because of the mediums it does feel very different, and I definitely embrace the thickness and the chunkiness of the graphite to create some of these bigger marks. So I do think it's different, and I know that it's not quite what you're used to seeing from me, but I do really think that that's what creativity is about. I get a lot of joy from new materials and playing around with them, not looking up tutorials but just going my own way and kind of ignoring the rules. So I definitely felt that joy here, and it was a really fun sort of 30 to 40 minutes of just play. So here's the end result. I hope you enjoyed watching that one and seeing this come to life. I hope it encourages you to create playfully and just having a go with any materials you might be a little bit unsure of. And I hope this is helpful to see what the Derwent XL graphite blocks are like. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments. A big thank you for watching, and a huge thank you to my patrons for their support and allowing me to create these videos on my channel. I hope you have a creative week, and I will see you next Sunday in my new YouTube video. See you later.